Hello and welcome to a special July 3rd edition of the DSR Daily. You know why it's a special July 3rd edition? Because July 4th is tomorrow, and we're not doing the DSR Daily tomorrow. So this is going to have to carry all the way to next Monday, July 7th. I'm David Rothkopf, and I'm joined by Minna Stein, who I'm sure is looking forward to the holiday weekend with great anticipation and probably loads of plans. Do you have loads of plans for July 4th, Minna?
Loads of plans. How about you?
Okay, that sounds like you have no plans for July 4th. None.
Maybe.
No, I have zero. I have absolutely no plans. Frankly, I don't know that there's that much to celebrate this July 4th. I think it may be one of the bleakest Independence Days in American history. I just saw a post from Jen Rubin, our friend formerly of the Washington Post, on her Substack, which enumerated the various complaints that were lodged in the Declaration of Independence against George III. I encourage you to go read it because almost all of them can be applied against the current regime in the United States and its leader. That it is so close, it is so uncanny that I think the best way to spend July 4th would be to read the Declaration of Independence and try to think about what they had in mind and how where we are is so far from it. But let's go over the news. Shoot a couple stories our way, Minna.
Okay, sounds good. Republicans moved forward with a crucial procedural vote late Wednesday on President Trump's sweeping domestic policy bill, which includes major tax cuts, increased border and defense spending, and deep cuts to healthcare and nutrition programs. GOP leaders scrambled to unite their caucus amid resistance from both moderates and hardliners over changes made by the Senate, while Trump personally lobbied holdouts and emphasized the bill's importance to his second-term agenda. Democrats remain unanimously opposed, calling the bill a massive betrayal, while Republicans have only a slim margin for defections as they aim to finalize the legislation before July 4th.
Um, yeah, look, this thing will have passed probably by the time that you've read it, or it may pass a couple of hours later. And it will go down as one of the worst pieces of legislation in modern American history. It will probably hurt more Americans than any other piece of legislation, certainly since the Civil War. And that's because there's over $1 trillion cut in healthcare there. There are probably 17 million people who within a couple of years will lose their healthcare as a result of this, 3 million plus people who will lose their food assistance that they need, food that they need. But, we're saying it's America, the richest country in the world. Go ahead, starve. Go ahead. Don't have health care. Go ahead. Don't have the things that any other country in the world would consider the bare minimum. But that's what this is about. It'll make the secret police of Trump, ICE, better funded, I think, than the third largest military in the world. They'll have a budget approaching $50 billion. That means more concentration camps. It means more masked men, unidentified, in tactical gear, going into your homes, going into restaurants, going into your towns and dragging people away. Thanks to the Supreme Court ruling, it could mean dragging them away and sending them to another country, sending them to the Sudan. And because the Supreme Court is saying all the cases about that have got to percolate up through the system for the next few years, Trump knows he can get away with it for the next few years. Other things that the Supreme Court has done, and by the way, it blows up the budget deficit. Trump, who bankrupted a bunch of companies, I think 6 times he declared bankruptcy, is about to do the same thing to the United States. But you want to know something? The Republicans, A, don't care, and B, have set it up so a bunch of these things won't kick in until after the midterm election. And a bunch of accounting techniques have been used to say, well, this will end in 6 or 7 years, so it doesn't show up as a big number in terms of the long-term costs. But they're intimidated by Trump. To give you a sense of just how tough the Republicans who were resisting this were, there's a story out this morning that some of them decided that they would switch over and support Trump when he offered to send them autographed pictures, when he offered to send them MAGA swag. And then they're like, oh, okay, sure, I'll betray my constituents for a MAGA hat. You talk about 30 pieces of silver, and now it's a MAGA hat. And this will come into law. One of the troubling assessments or one of the troubling rationalizations I saw from a Republican pertaining to this was he said, well, Trump told me he'll issue some executive orders so that he doesn't actually implement all of it. What? So the Congress is using the president's offer to abuse his power and break the law by not following the law as a rationalization for them to pass a bad law. That's where we've come. It's a very, very grim day for a lot of Americans. And the only hope I can see in this is that people say, oh my God, we've made a terrible mistake. The United States government has turned against us. It is hurting us now, hurting our neighbors, hurting our children, hurting our grandchildren, hurting us in the future. And we're going to mobilize and do something about it. That's the only comfort I can get out of this. We'll talk about this more on our Words Matter podcast with Norm Ornstein. And I know a lot of you really depend on that. So go download it, listen to it today, listen to it over the weekend. It'll provide some perspective on where we go from here.
President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky are expected to speak on Friday about the recent pause in key U.S. weapons deliveries to Ukraine, according to the Financial Times. Zelensky is also expected to raise the issue of future arms sales during the call, though the timing may shift. The U.S. decision to pause shipment, including critical Patriot air defense missiles, has sparked concern in Kyiv, where officials warn it could undermine Ukraine's ability to defend against escalating Russian attacks.
It's terrible. It's a betrayal. Who does it help? Trump says he wants to end the war. He's trying to present himself as a man who seeks to save lives on both sides. But he's not saving lives on both sides. He's helping the Russians, hurting the Ukrainians, making it easier for Russians to kill Ukrainians. That's what he's doing. That's what he does in everything. When at the G20 meeting, what did he take his time for? To plead the case of Russia to rejoin the G8, or what was the G8 is now the G7 because Russia's not in it. He does Russia's errands all the time, and he is doing it now. And because of the big bill, because of the Supreme Court, because of what ICE is doing, because of so many other things, we're just not covering it. We are not covering this betrayal of heroes who are standing up against aggression and trying to defend democracy. Betrayal with the big, beautiful bill, betrayal with Ukraine, betrayal is a theme in Trump's life. I wrote about this yesterday in the Daily Beast, but ask his wives, ask his business partners, ask the people who he hired their services and never paid them, ask Elon Musk, ask people who supported him in the past, ask Rudy Giuliani. When the time comes and Trump doesn't feel he needs you anymore, he betrays you. And if the American people don't get it yet, he doesn't need you anymore. The betrayal is taking place, and it's as ugly as anything we've ever seen.
Kilmar Abrego Garcia, whose deportation by the Trump administration was ruled illegal, has detailed harrowing abuse in El Salvador's CECOT prison, including beatings, sleep deprivation, and being denied basic sanitation. His new court filing refutes the administration's claims that he is a gang member, asserting that Salvadorian prison officials confirmed his tattoos are not gang-related and that he was held incommunicado for over a month. The filing also accuses U.S. immigration officials of misleading him about legal proceedings to block him from asserting his rights. Abrego Garcia is now back in U.S. custody, facing human smuggling charges.
The United States is guilty of crimes against humanity. You grab people off of the street, and without due process, you send them off to a foreign prison. Bad enough. But now, when you read these reports, in one particular report, all these people were forced to kneel on the floor for an entire night, not moving, beat when they moved, shitting in their pants, unable to go to use a restroom, not being fed. And then what they would do with Abrego Garcia, according to the report, is, they'd say, well, we're going to put you in with the El Salvadoran gangs. They'll kill you. They'll fuck you up. They threatened him with all sorts of torture. We are running concentration camps. We are violating human rights. This to say nothing of our support for Israel's genocide in Palestine, which is the same thing. This is to say nothing of our support for Russia's attacks on the innocent people of Ukraine. We have crossed over to the dark side, where we are no longer defenders of democracy. We are no longer defenders of the rule of law. We are no longer the defenders of human rights. We have become one of the countries that uses our awesome power to harm people, to benefit just a handful who are close to the leaders. That's Russia, folks. That's North Korea, folks. That's every corrupt authoritarian regime since the beginning of time. When you're sitting out there firing off fireworks or lighting a sparkler this weekend, ask yourself what you're celebrating, and ask yourself, does it exist anymore? Is it worth celebrating anymore? Or should we be celebrating the spirit of pushing back on abuses like that? Maybe that's what we really need to celebrate this weekend.
President Donald Trump has called for Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell to resign immediately, intensifying a long-standing criticism of Powell over interest rate policy. Trump's outburst, posted on Truth Social, was tied to a call by a federal housing official for an investigation into Powell's Senate testimony about costly renovations at the Fed's headquarters. Although Trump nominated Powell during his first term, he has since clashed with him repeatedly. However, Powell has stated he will not step down voluntarily, and legal precedent protects Fed chairs from being removed by the president without cause.
Why is Trump doing this? And by the way, let's just remember, Trump appointed Powell. Just going back to our earlier point about betrayal. But why is Trump doing it? Because if he had a puppet Fed chair, the puppet Fed chair could lower interest rates, make money easier to get to people, ignore inflationary pressures, and help Trump deal with the downturn in the economy that is the result of his reckless tariffs. It is the result of his massive cuts to spending in key cities around the country. That is the result of people losing faith in the United States government with him at the helm. And so, he wants people to help him cover up the consequences of his actions for as long as he's in power, regardless of the long-term consequences for the United States. Powell is courageously defending us against that. By the way, there was a modestly positive jobs report today. And I have to say, my first reaction when I saw it was, I don't know if I believe the numbers anymore. Because these are agencies that have Trump people in charge. And we know that Trump will lie about these things. We know that lying is one of the ways that he sort of inoculates his supporters against feeling the pain of the reality that he has created. I'll give you another example of that, by the way, which relates to the big, beautiful bill, and it also relates to lying. Trump, in the past 24 hours, via True Social, and his press secretary have both come out and said one of the provisions of the big, beautiful bill is no taxes on Social Security income. That's just not true. It's not in there. It's a complete lie. Just like the lie that this will not increase the deficit. Just like the lie that they're not pushing anybody off of Medicaid. They're just trying to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, which doesn't exist to any degree like the cuts that they're putting in. Those are lies. And somehow Trump thinks that he can be protected behind a shield of lies. Well, how do you defeat a shield of lies? You try to find the truth. Obviously, you're here, you're listening to this podcast, this small little podcast, one little small podcast among many that are out there that will tell you the truth. You may not get it from big media where, ABC and CBS are owned by parent companies that have paid off the Trump administration. But you can get it if you look on podcasts, on social media, from independent media, from people you trust. And that's the first step. The first step is trying to understand what's the truth and what's a lie.
A newly released CIA review criticized the process behind the 2016 intelligence assessment that Russia aimed to help Donald Trump win the election, but ultimately supports the report's overall findings. The review, commissioned by CIA Director John Ratcliffe, found the assessment was rushed and relied too heavily on a single source, yet still met high analytical standards and maintained, quote, strong adherence to tradecraft. While Trump and his allies seized on the review to claim political manipulation, intelligence experts and former officials largely view it as a validation of the original assessment's core conclusion.
Yeah, okay, see, lies, okay? See what's happening here? The CIA reached a conclusion. It was a conclusion, by the way, that was reached by every single U.S. intelligence agency and many foreign intelligence agencies, that the Russians were manipulating election results or seeking to influence election results. But when Ratcliffe got hired, one of his jobs was to do Trump's bidding with regard to undoing the accusations that he had Russian support or that he colluded with Russia. He undertook the study, and because of a huge amount of pushback within the CIA, they came out with this very, very thin gruel of saying, oh, this was rushed. But the critical point is, it was true. And the finding is supported. And Russians did meddle. Now, you may think this is yesterday's news, but just think back a couple of months. Trump has dismantled the parts of the United States government that identify and protect us against Russian interference in upcoming elections. Those protections are gone. The people who would have blown the whistle are, from many critical places, gone. So take that and combine it with this. The Russians do interfere, and we are not protecting ourselves against them. I wonder why. I wonder why. Well, let's just go back 3 stories to Trump stopping aid for Ukraine that helps the Russians. The Russians interfere. Trump does their bidding. Trump reduces the ways that we can protect ourselves from them. Every story here is linked, including betrayal. Ask yourself, who's being betrayed when the CIA director wants the CIA to lie, when the CIA director wants conclusions that undermine our national security? Because the answer is you.
That was our last our last story to round out the day before the 4th of July. I was just thinking about what you were saying about like the spirit of 4th of July and thinking about resistance. And it reminded me of this Mark Twain quote that I will be thinking about on the 4th of July, which is patriotism is supporting your country all the time and your government when it deserves it. And that's a quote that I'm thinking
Absolutely.
about a lot. But specifically on the 4th of July, when I think it is important to celebrate your country, and celebrating your country is standing up to a government if it's corrupt.
Absolutely, Minna. A perfect ending for this. Something to think about as you go into this weekend. Enjoy yourselves. I did notice that there is a story that took place today that takes place every 4th of July weekend, which is somewhere in the United States, a fireworks factory blows up. And, I think this just happened in California. Okay, stay away from fire. It's just stupid. You know what else you should stay away from on July 4th weekend? Amusement parks. There's a big amusement park in Ohio, Cedar Point. They introduced a new uh, roller coaster yesterday. And I strongly oppose roller coasters. And the roller coaster went on its first ride, flipped upside down, and got stuck. And everybody on the roller coaster was stuck, hanging upside down for 10 or 15 minutes. Um, so, there are plenty of ways, have a hot dog, have a hamburger, think about what Minna has suggested you think about from Mark Twain. Think about the Declaration of Independence. Be with your families. Appreciate what's good in your community, and rededicate yourself to the ideas that underlay the Declaration of Independence. And have a great weekend. And next Monday, we'll be back here with the DSR Daily. And our friend Riley will be back from his jaunt across the country. And I will tell him what a great job Minna did carrying the load entirely on her own. Until then, if you've missed a few of our recent podcasts, Zilla Consciousness, Words Matter, Deep State Radio, great discussion yesterday on where we are in American politics with Mike Tomasky, Ed Luce, and Simon Rosenberg. If you missed any of those, or our podcast on AI, energy, and climate, go back and listen over the weekend. And we hope you enjoy them. And we hope if you like them, you go and you support us at the DSRnetwork.com, where you can be a member for just the price of a latte or some small fireworks. I don't know how much fireworks cost, but if you save the money you were planning to spend on fireworks and use it to support us, that may be also in keeping with the spirit of the weekend. Until then, happy 4th, Minna. Happy 4th, everybody. Bye-bye.